Here we are again. Don't give me your brown eyes and say you're innocent. I tell you how I feel, but you're not listening. This is the end, you know better. Coming home real late and I can smell love. Oh, the way I hate how much I love you. I'm walking on the edge. I'm on the edge. I'm falling over. I'm falling over the edge. You call me crazy, 'cause I didn't wanna share you was no safety. Pulled the trigger, took your shot, I'm bleeding. I'm empty, I'm on the edge. I'm on the edge. I'm falling over, I'm falling over. I'm on the edge. I'm on the edge. I'm falling over, I'm falling over the I'm on the edge, I'm on the edge. Here we are again. Don't give me your brown eyes and say you're innocent. I tell you how I feel, but you're not listening. This is the end, you know better. Coming home real late and I can smell love. Oh, the way I hate how much I love you. I'm walking on the edge. I'm on the edge. I'm falling over. I'm falling over the edge. You call me crazy, 'cause I didn't wanna share you was no safety. Pulled the trigger, took your shot, I'm bleeding. I'm empty, I'm on the edge. I'm on the edge. I'm falling over, I'm falling over. I'm on the edge.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Steve Freeman Podcast. It is Tuesday. I think it's Tuesday. Yeah, it's Tuesday. I'm glad that we got notification today that the podcast 2 weeks ago has 10,000 views on YouTube. So thank you guys, everybody that's checking out the podcast on YouTube. We are simulcasting the podcast now every week, Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. So no matter which platform you like, we got you covered. And then also it's available starting Wednesdays at noon on iTunes as well as Spotify. So thank you guys for consuming the podcast. A lot of great things coming up. I'm going to have a special guest here in a couple weeks. One of my best friends in the world, Billy Falcon, is going to be with us. He's only written, I think, 63 songs for Bon Jovi. One of my best friends in the world. Love him to death. We're going to talk songwriting. We're going to talk the music business, what it used to be, what it is. And then, of course, we'll get into what everybody wants to know about, and that is what Bon Jovi's got going on and what they're going to be doing as well. But that is coming up. Tonight, I am pleased to have and welcome for the first time, hopefully not the last time, but definitely for the first time, Jason T. Lewis from Painfully Honest Tech, the YouTube channel. It is good to have you here, my man, and thank you so much for agreeing to do the show and welcome in.
Hey, thanks, Steve, for having me. Yeah, it's very cool. I'm excited. It's been a long time that we've been talking about doing this, so I'm glad we were able to get it done.
Oh, it has, man. Thank you so much for making the time. And the reason that I wanted to have you on for many different reasons. And one of them is, and I don't remember when it was, maybe 6 or 8 months ago. And I was watching a camera video or something. And one of your thumbnails was the suggested video on the bottom right hand. It had nothing to do with the camera. And I saw the picture, and it was the picture that grabbed me. And I thought, I'm going to watch this anything painfully honest. Cause that's kind of what I'm known for in the entertainment business, in the music business is, I don't give shit. I don't take shit. So, right. And I clicked on it and I was just totally taken by your channel. And then of course I went down the rabbit hole and I watched everything that you had done. And I did that because to me, you have something different than most all of these other, I even hate the word YouTuber. I really hate it with a passion. But you've got something different, and that is that you seem very genuine, that this is not a get rich quick scheme. This is, you enjoy what it is you're talking about. You're very passionate about it. And you seem to come across that you want other people to feel passionate about it as well, or prevent somebody from making mistakes. So I really enjoy your content. And then, I started getting into watching your live streams and I just was interested to know, I would love to know, because we've bantered back and forth via email, and we're going to get into music and how much you love music, but I would love to hear about your YouTube journey and how a guy that was living in in New York winds up in Iowa and grows his channel over 100,000 people in 1 year. I got to know it.
Well, as you said, music is my first love. I've been in bands and I've been on stage performing since I was 8 years old. So we moved, at first we moved back to West Virginia where I grew up. And I went back to school. I thought, well, maybe I'll just do the music thing on the side and I'll go to I'll teach high school English or something along those lines. I ended up getting together with somebody as I finished up my degree. I started college in 1989 and graduated in 2004. So it was a little bit of a long road, but so I took a a class with an MFA student in fiction,
Mm.
and I'd written fiction on and off for years. You know, when I was in college, I kind of took all the poetry classes, which worked for me because I was a songwriter. I still wanted to take more writing classes, so I took fiction classes, wrote short stories and that kind of thing. I ended up writing about 50 pages of what became my first novel.
Oh, wow.
And I decided to apply to MFA, Master of Fine Arts programs in fiction writing, and I only applied to 2 programs. One was West Virginia because that's where I was, and that's where I figured we were going to stay, and the other was University of Iowa.
Okay.
So University of Iowa Writers Workshop was the first graduate writing program. It's created something like 30 plus Pulitzer Prize winners. Wow. Just really a hugely successful program. I applied there because their deadline was early, and I'd always promised myself I would. But I ended up getting in. So the whole family, we had already bought a house in West Virginia. That's how much we thought we weren't going to Iowa.
Wow.
So at first I came out here, I was doing the school thing, living in a 9x10 rooming house room. And second year, my wife and daughter came out here. We bought a house. I graduated in 2007 from that, and just started on the teaching round. I started on teaching rounds in a small community or small liberal arts college, and then at the business school here at Iowa. And now I run the writing humanities program at the College of Medicine here in Iowa.
Nice.
And yes, so I wrote a novel. I have another novel that's finished. I'm writing a memoir. All that stuff. All that stuff is what I do. It's in my head is like, that's what I do. And along the way in 2013, maybe, I'd been throwing things on YouTube every once in a while since I opened an account and got a channel somewhere in like 2007. I think if you go back to the earliest video that I have on YouTube, it's like a sort of picture collage video backed up by one of my songs. And I think that came out in like 2007 sometime.
Right.
But in 2013, I wasn't going out as much. I had made some decisions about my lifestyle that were going to keep me out of the social circles. And I just wanted to keep doing something creative. And YouTube seemed fun. I was playing video games with a buddy of mine who lives in Buffalo. We've known each other since college, and we wanted to play Battlefield 4 together. And I'd never bought a gaming headset. So I bought a gaming headset and paid $70-80 for it or something. It was awful. It was just terrible. It was painful to wear. It sounded like crap. How could I possibly pay $80 for something like that? So I started making videos about gaming headsets. I tried to find one or several that were better than garbage.
Right.
And people started watching those videos, not to any great extent. I think my most successful video at that time was a reboxing of a Turtle Beach headset that I had bought. It was one of their first wireless headsets, and it sounded like banging two trash can lids together on my ears, and it was just no fun. So I made those videos, and I just kept making them here and there. I got more serious about making YouTube videos probably around 2015-ish, maybe mid 2015. By mid 2016, I sort of dedicated myself a little bit more and decided I was going to do 2 or 3 videos a week. Fast forward to 2017, probably in like August or so of that year, I had sort of transitioned over to making videos about smartphones. And all of a sudden I made some iPhone videos. Those started to get a lot of views, like a couple of 100,000 views. And I was just kind of blown away. I started, I think June of 2017, I had 5,000 subscribers. And by the end of 2017, I had about 40,000.
That's about when I caught on. Because I almost want to. I remember the first time I clicked on, I thought I saw like 37,000 is something like that.
Yeah. So that was probably toward the end of last year, And then 2018, I just, YouTube is cyclical, especially like with tech and stuff where there's a lot that has to do with whether or not new tech is being released. This is the first of the year. Usually the summer starts to heat up, and then you go through the fall, and that's really the season where all the smartphones come out and there's lots of talk. So I got to that point probably at about 60 something thousand this year, or 2018. And suddenly in 2 months, I grew like 40,000+ subscribers in the span of 6 or 8 weeks.
Now, can you point that back to, that you think it's the series of videos, or can you point it back to one video that was like, this is where I just saw it like go nuts?
So probably toward the middle of 2018, I started making a series of videos called Can You Trust?
Right.
And they were about other YouTubers. And my goal, instead of just like casting shade and getting all drama like about it, I wanted to talk about what people did and how they did it, and what I thought about it, and whether or not I felt like at the end of the day you could listen to them on about a tech product and say, oh yeah, I feel confident about that, or not. And there were mostly people were trustworthy, with caveats here and there. But and a couple that I had problems with, and I kind of said so. That series kind of got things moving in 2018. The first video that I did was on MKBHD, who, if you're not familiar with the tech world, he's somewhere over 7 million subscribers right now. Yeah, and I think that video right now has about 600,000 or 700,000 views on it.
Wow.
And then, I just kind of ran down the list of bigger YouTubers and did these videos. And really what I wanted to do was start a conversation about, like, what does tech, what do we have to do in order to allow people to trust us as tech YouTubers? Because this was a thing that didn't exist until probably 4 or 5 years ago. We're not really journalists. We're not really entertainers. So why should people trust tech YouTubers? And that started a conversation where a lot of the folks that I featured on the show ended up coming on my live streams or coming on my podcast, and I got to know a lot of people. But yet the iPhone XS and XS Max, when they started to be announced and come around, that's when I started to get a little bit more momentum. And then the night that pre-orders were happening for the iPhone XS and XS Max, I released a video that basically said, I'm not going to order one of these new iPhones. Typically, especially as a tech YouTuber, I would go to the website and stay up all night and order one. But I was just like, I'm not going to do it. I was really kind of disenchanted with Apple. I made that video, I released it, and within a week it had about 1 million views.
Wow.
And that's what started growing those subs. So I had 100,000 subs by early October of last year, and now I'm at 132 or something. So yeah, I mean, it was nothing. The thing about YouTube is, I just did it because I enjoy doing stuff like this, and I didn't have any expectations for it really. I was just kind of like, oh yeah, I'll do this. It's kind of fun. I never done anything before. So I just kind of started with a webcam and went from there. And suddenly it became a thing. Like within the course of about a little more than a year, it was like, oh wow, like the kind of success that I'd been hoping to get with my music career and with my writing career, where it might give me a little bit of leeway to focus more on my art. That kind of success was then now coming to me through YouTube, which was something that, not that I didn't care about, but it just wasn't as big a deal to me, and so now, I still just try and have fun with it. And it's really important to me, like you said, to be open and honest and just kind of lay it out for people as much as I can. And I think that does come across in the videos.
Well,
which
it absolutely comes across in the videos, and that is one of the things. And I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but I have to say that it's you're growing at such a great rate and in a rapid rate that it almost opens you up to another sector within YouTube. And I love hearing your explanation about how you do it and how you did it, because I've gone down this rabbit hole the last 6 weeks of listening to all these people who want to accomplish what it is that you're accomplishing, and they spend 110% of their time watching, and I'm not going to name any names, but watching the how-to YouTube guys and how to grow your channel and algorithm this and algorithm that and blah, 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 and rinse and repeat Gary V. And I've just always come from the school of that if you make quality content for the right reason, that it is your job as the content creator to bring an audience to yourself. And I love seeing people like you that, I mean, I'm not saying anything bad about them, but we're not buying airplane tickets to go to this summit or this con or this thing to sit and get somebody to tell you how to build your YouTube channel. When the fact of the matter is if you create content people care about, you are an interesting person and they buy into you, because nobody buys products, they buy people. So, you know, that says a lot about you and that you're doing it. To me, you're doing it the organic way, and it's proving that it does work, where you're not trying to trick the algorithm or you're not trying to do any of that kind of stuff. And it's nice to see that, like in the music world, it's kind of the same thing, but I've got 6,000 great songs sitting in a drawer that nobody will ever hear. The hits that I've been lucky enough to have, somebody asked me the other day, how do you write a hit song? And I'm like, okay, well, here's how you write a hit song, okay? You sit down and you write a song. Then you have to have a major publishing deal that happens to get it to the artist or the manager, and then the record label spends $1.5 million to make it hit. That is what makes a hit song. And I'm looking at this YouTube thing through those lenses. And I love seeing people who, just like yourself, who you're doing it because you have a passion for it, you love doing it, and you're making content that obviously people care about. And you know, to me, that's important to show other people. If you're out there and you're watching, like, how do I start a YouTube channel and how do I grow it? Just like this man's doing it.
Yeah, I mean, when I was coming up, I spent, you know, a lot of those years watching the YouTube guru folks, Tim Schmoyer, Daryl Eves, Roberto Blake. You know, those guys have really valuable stuff to learn.
Yes.
And Roberto has helped me as an advisor for the channel for the past 9 months or so, and it's just great to have somebody to bounce ideas off of. But the thing that was really important to me, the thing that I had learned from, you know, all of those other years of being a creative person, is that there isn't that sort of formula that you can put together. And in fact, you kind of have to learn what the formula is and then bend it to your will.
Well, that is one thing I've noticed. The YouTube rules are different for everybody.
Right. I mean, this time last year, I couldn't say for certain if I released a video on one day or the next, whether I thought it was going to perform well or not. But I'm at a point now where I can pretty much say, within a certain margin of error, like, I think this video is going to do pretty well, you know, within the bounds of how the channel does.
Sure, absolutely. And
then other videos.
And do you allow that to drive the content that you're making going forward?
It's a balance, because a lot of the content that will get more views is the more controversial or more opinionated stuff. And I love doing that stuff, because I feel like it's important to kind of push buttons and make people challenge their own thoughts about something. I just released a video today called, you know, the smartphone era is over, where I explain, you know, what's happening in the smartphone market and what has happened in the past few years. And that's a video that I think will perform pretty well. but it's still important to me to make content that I'm into as well. Like still some product reviews, still some live streams, or, you know, studio tours, or just things that won't perform as well, but yet are really valuable in terms of still having that balance.
Right.
Sarah Dietschy, who's another creator, she talked a lot about when she started, she would do one for them and one for her. So she would just do one video that, you know, was for the YouTube audience, and one that was more her kind of thing. And she found her balance that way. And I kind of try and do the same thing within the framework of knowing what my lane is.
Well, absolutely. You know, and I got to tell you, I was really impressed. I tuned into one of the live streams that you were doing, and this was, I don't know, maybe this was about a month or 6 weeks ago, and it was right when MKBHD, the whole thing happened with his Tesla, and I mean, maybe for YouTube world it was a little heated, but y'all got into a very fundamental ethical argument, if you will, and debate about, you did not think that it was right for him to put out there and I agreed 100% with you that it almost seemed like that was a backroom deal, that they gave him this car, Lincoln, wasn't it? And Acura. Yeah, gave him the Acura, and then now all of a sudden everything's about Acura, where he had been talking about Tesla for 2 years, and
right.
You know, that to me, I think is important, because you look around in this space, in the YouTube world, and you see so many people trying to build their channels by jumping on the coattails of a hot topic and running with it, and most of the time agreeing with it. And I know you took a lot of heat for that, and saying that, look, I don't think that was right, but I appreciated that.
Oh, I appreciate that too. I mean, you know, sometimes it's the optics, quote unquote, of how something looks. You know, he, at that point, he sort of tweeted about having had this accident, and his Tesla was going to be in the shop for weeks, if not longer. And within a few hours, Acura got in touch with him and was like, "Hey, we'll let you borrow a car." And that just seemed to me like,
I loved how he worded it, and you pointed this out eloquently. It was, they just stopped by.
Yeah.
Nobody stops by.
Yeah, nobody just like rolls by your place and be like, "Hey, I heard you had an accident,"
and you just happen to be there. And no, it's well. And the other thing too is the point that I agree, and I think this is a lesson for people that want to do YouTube, that want to be creative, and most importantly want to be financially profitable from it, is that if you're going to do something and you're going to make it public, then make it public. It's like, I can't tell you the number of times, if I'm producing a record on a superstar or something, I can tell you all the time, people come in, it's like, "Hey, so-and-so wants you to wear this shirt." And it's like, okay, well, I'll wear the shirt, but if you want me to put it on Instagram or you want me to put it on Twitter, that's going to cost you. And that goes through another, then it goes to management, then it goes to business management, and it gets funneled. For him to put that out there as publicly as he did was just hard for me to believe, as you did, that this was just the great folks at Acura.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because I'd never interacted with him. I had made the Can You Trust video about him, and I'd sort of tweeted at him a few different times here and there. And I did tweet at him when I had that issue with getting the Acura. But then last Friday night, I ended up on a live stream with him.
And that is the cool thing about the community.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a guy named, he calls his channel Viper, and he has a live stream channel, and he gets much larger YouTubers than, he's got like 1,000 plus subscribers. I think.
I am a Viper subscriber. I will say that, both channels.
Yeah. And he got MKBHD to come on last Friday night, and I jumped in at a certain point, and he explained in more detail how the Acura thing happened. And once he did that, I was like, okay, it all makes sense. And it's just the way that it came across on social media was the thing. So the whole explanation was, he's done tech, and he can basically do anything that he wants to with tech. He could reach out to any company and say, I want to review your product. They would fall over themselves to get it to him. But he's also interested in cars. So he's been talking about Teslas, and he's sort of got a new video series called Autofocus. And the first people that ever allowed him to borrow a car to review was Acura.
See, and that makes all the sense. And there's the 2 + 2 = 4.
Right. And so when that happened, he had a relationship with the people that he had worked with for that video, and they got in touch with him. And it wasn't necessarily because, we see this opportunity. Of course they see the opportunity,
sure.
but
it was because of the previous relationship.
Right. And so once you hear that, and you know, like you said, the 2 + 2 = 4, it makes more sense. But a lot of times, especially with bigger people in any entertainment industry, you'll see one thing, and it'll look hinky.
Right.
And I think that's something that everybody has to get better at, is understanding like how stuff looks, especially YouTubers who are, kind of homegrown for the most part, and don't have the marketing degrees and don't have the PR agencies and all that kind of stuff. And yet they have gigantic audiences that might see something one way or the other and be like, oh man, that's weird. So that was the interesting thing about that. And that's been as I've met more people who do have larger channels than I do, and who do the same kinds of things that I'm doing, I'm learning a lot that is just not visible when you're down in the lower echelons working your way up. That doesn't mean I'm not going to hold people to a high standard, because if we don't, then it's really easy to get on that slippery slope and just slide right down. Sure,
Absolutely. So, well, where do you think, and where do you want your channel to go, in the future? Because the tech thing, it seems like now that this is the new bandwagon, that doing YouTube tech channels seems to be the thing that everybody is wanting to do and trying to do. And as somebody like yourself, who I think is probably the emergent one out of most all of them, where do you see your channel going in the next year?
I mean, it's really hard to say, because my reach goal for last year was 50,000 subs,
right?
And I blew right past that by October. So it's hard to say what's going to happen. I would like to be past 200,000 by this time next year. But I think that stuff like that maybe has an exponential value to it. So if I get to 200, it might be more than 200. But at this point, it's weird because the subs don't really, I almost said something that sounds really bad. The subs aren't the metric anymore. It's like, I'm at a point, once you go over 100,000, you're kind of at a point where you know that you have a foundation to build on. Up until 100,000, it's like you're scraping up the mountain to get to a place where you can have that foundation to build on. So this year is more about kind of trying to take what I do and build it into a business in a certain way, that will allow me to, I mean, at a certain point, I'm going to have to walk away from the job that I have, which is really scary, for a couple of different reasons. One, I love the job. I've been there going on 10 years, and I love working with students. Med students are super smart, and I love to teach and teach writing. So those are all things that I love to do, and I don't necessarily not want to do them. But at the same time, there'll be diminishing returns on both sides. As YouTube gets busier, then I won't be able to focus as much on either. And I don't want to do that, because I don't want to not do YouTube to my fullest extent where I see what I can do. And I don't want to shortchange the students at work.
Well, and that's understandable. Totally.
But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to get to, well, it's really hard to pinpoint that place. you know, like this dollar amount saved, or, you know, this much money coming in per month or whatever. Basically, I mean, I've got a job that has fantastic healthcare, um, lots of security, and I have a wife and a daughter and a mortgage and 2 cars and all that kind of stuff. And to walk away from that stability to then say, now I'm going to do YouTube full time is like the transition that I need to make this year, and then I kind of have plans to make, but it's really kind of scary because
it's completely in other people's hands. That's you have the only thing you have control over is the actual creation of the product.
Right. And I can do all the hustle things that you need to do, you know, like try and build relationships with brands and advertisers and those kinds of things. The thing for me is it's going to be a really fine line in terms of sponsorships and doing ad reads and those kinds of things, because I don't want to even have the possibility of undercutting what I've set up with the channel, the honesty and the straightforwardness. I don't want to then be like, and now I'm a pitch man, buy this thing.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I've seen you almost struggle with that because it seems to me that you have a very strict moral code when it comes to that kind of thing. And it's, you want it to be very, you know, above board and upfront and honest, you know, with people. And I think that's great. Look, I think there's a middle ground there almost in the day and time that we live in, because, you know, with radio, television, your more mainstream print, even magazine, these large advertisers and these large companies are starting to understand that people make buying decisions and habits based on what they see on their phone, usually within the first 45 minutes of the day. That's going to set their tone. And people are no longer, they're not tuning into the news the way they used to. They're not tuning into all these, even the NFL this year was down big time, TV viewership. Right. They are starting to see the value of what online entertainment can bring, and that people watch longer and they engage more. And you know, from my side of things, that's what I try to tell artists, especially when I'm consulting record labels, is that the thing that you don't want fans. As an artist, you don't want fans. You don't want likes on Facebook. You don't want likes on Instagram, because none of that can be monetized. None of it. But an engaged fan base, that's what you want. And it seems to me that what's going on with YouTube right now, and also going on with Twitch, with esports and gaming, that's what these advertisers are starting to realize, that these people are not just consuming the content. They're consuming the content and reacting to it and being very engaging with it.
Right. It used to be before there was sort of this interactive social aspect of media, like if you were in a band and you released a record and people went out and bought the record, that was the transaction. Then you go on tour and they come out and they buy a t-shirt and they pay to get into the venue. So that was the transaction that brought you the money. But now with something like YouTube, like you said before, people aren't necessarily coming just because of the product or whatever it is that you're talking about. They're also showing up in large part because of the entertainer themselves.
Sure.
The creator, you know, and that's the transition that people have to make, you know, when they're doing YouTube. They have to make that transition between their content being about what they're talking about and their content being part of the narrative of what their whole channel is about. Right. And I think it's really hard for me because, you know, I grew up in the late 80s and early 90s as a punk rock kid, and doing the thing where, you know, go out and, hey, check this out, and, you know, then taking some money for it still feels really weird to me. you know, so the important thing to me is to be open and honest about what I'm doing. Like at this point, I've said I don't do reviews for money. I'm going to put a finer point on that and say at least that I will never allow anyone to have like editorial say over what I do in a video. because the kinds of places that you end up being
Right.
when you start to get into this stuff, people want different kinds of things. One thing that kind of boggles my mind, and hopefully it will change, is that a lot of companies will reach out to you and they'll say, we'll pay you X number of dollars if you make a standalone video about our product. And my response to them is like, well, if I make a standalone video about your product, that puts me in a weird position, because unless I'm like really into your product, then I will feel uncomfortable. But also, nobody tunes into my channel to watch that, to watch that standalone video.
Right.
They tune into the channel because they've watched dozens and dozens of the videos, and they're kind of into the whole narrative of it. So if I can say, this video is sponsored by the folks who make this product, and here's what this product is about and where you can get it, then they're going to get more value out of that. But a lot of places, they don't necessarily understand that. They want the video to be about them.
Well, absolutely. I mean, because nobody's going to pay you. I mean, you would think that companies would want to have the paid product placement for an honest assessment, because you would think that the consumer would care.
Right.
But I also see your side of it as well, where it's like, okay, if I'm not going to take money just to say positive things about something when I actually know that it's not all positive. If you can't look at something and see all sides of it, then it's really not of any value, because the consumer's going to go buy it anyway. And they're going to get it, and they're going to find the negative, and you don't want to be the guy, man, Jason didn't say anything about any of this. And that's when you lose that credibility with your audience, and the audience is everything.
Yeah, and I've watched a lot of folks over the years kind of make the transition from being going in their own way editorially, like choosing what videos they're going to make and how and why, and then having the opportunity to do sponsored videos and taking those on, and maybe then it becomes interesting in a different way. A lot of tech YouTubers are fantastic cinematographers. They make beautiful looking videos. And so, those sponsored videos are an opportunity for them to really stretch their legs in those skills. But for me, I make my videos really simply. I sit in front of the camera and I talk about what I'm talking about. Maybe I'll show people what I'm talking about. Maybe a little cut of a product picture or something like that. So I just want to be able to say, this is what's happening. Sponsored video. These people reached out to me. They asked me to check this out. And I've done it with, from a company called Nockies. They make AirPods knockoffs. and they cost like $50 or $60.
Yeah. I wish you'd put that video out about 5 days before you put that video out. I got suckered in with the AirPods from Colorware, because I had them customized.
Oh,
but I would not have done that. If I'd seen that video, I would have much rather spent the $50 that I spent over the whatever $400 or whatever it was.
Right.
I'll put some colored freaking duct tape on that case, and I'll get my daughter to paint them.
Right. And hopefully what came through in that video is that, like, from a sound standpoint, they sound really good. I would say almost better than, in some ways, the real AirPods. They don't have all the same kind of functionality. They have a lot, but they don't have that fancy Apple magic inside of them. And they're a good substitute if you don't mind not having those things. You know what I mean? But the real AirPods, they might be one of the top products that Apple's ever made, just because of how they've taken the wireless technology and made it so easy. I've fought with wireless headphones for years now, just trying to get them to hook up to my phone so I could I could listen to what I wanted to listen to,
Sure.
you know, without turning Bluetooth on and off and all this other stuff. So yeah, it's one of those things where I want to be able to tell people, like, this is cool because of this, or this is not cool because of this.
Well, and I think that's, I mean, I think that's valuable. Somebody in the chat right now saying, Simply Beth says she bought the Nockies. I wish I had, you know, and a lot of it too, especially with those, when you're talking about the sound. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and they're like, you know, I bought, for Christmas, I bought my wife the new Bose ones, and I bought my daughter I think they're the Jabras or whatever, just, you know, and everybody's like, well, what do they sound like? And it's like, well, that is really subjective, number one, but number two, none of them sound good. And the reason that is, I mean, you can't take what was an 80 megabyte file, even digitally for a song or anything else, and squish it down to 3.5 megabytes and think that anything's going to sound good. You know, there's a bar there. And that's why I'm with you. I'm sure that the Nockies, if you're listening to something you enjoy, nobody's going, God, you know, the EQ, that's just, you know, it's
yeah.
Just
I really
not,
wish there wasn't that weird mid-range hump at 2,500 hertz.
Absolutely, you know, it's like, I don't. That sounds more like they just put a vintage scoop in this thing, you know. Nobody's doing that, you know, and so but I think, you know, the thing that Apple's got going for it, I mean, it's the brand. You know, everybody's scared. The funny thing of it is people will spend the $199 because they're buying the brand, but very few people would spend the $50 because they're worried about getting ripped off, or that it's not that great of a product. But like you assimilated, they're not the Apples are not $150 better.
No, they're not. I mean, you're paying for like Apple's history,
sure,
as well as the product. And Apple has built a history of people knowing that their products are pretty good, and they've got a long history of making quality stuff. So they're willing to make the leap to buy the AirPods, as opposed to something that, you know, is kind of flying under the radar, and they're just like, oh, maybe I'll maybe I'll get this. It doesn't seem like as much of a value proposition. Like, the cheaper something is, the less people think it's worth.
Well, no, that's true. We've done that as a society, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I want to get into music with you.
Sure.
Because I know you've launched the new YouTube channel and Twitch channel, right? Where you're focusing on the covers. Tell me a little bit about your musical journey and what you're going to do with it in the future.
So, I mean, I started singing at a really young age, like 3 years old. I was singing songs from memory. You know, I was like the performing seal of the family. Like, you know, of course, I'm from West Virginia. One of the first songs I learned to sing was "Take Me Home, Country Roads," and so it just went on from there. And I've written hundreds and hundreds of songs, and basically, I kind of took that to the place that I could take it in, you know, 10, 15 years ago, 15 plus years ago, as like a 20 something into being an early 30 something. You know, I sold out, not sold out, but I just basically went all in on, I'm going to do everything that I can to make this happen. Right. And was able to make a couple of records, was able to do some pretty cool stuff with it. You know, got some major label interest, got some indie label interest, et cetera, et cetera. And then I was like, well, you know, it's not going to be what I wanted it to be when I was 22 years old. So I need to take a break. And now I'm kind of coming back to it. And, you know, starting this channel is kind of I've built this audience on YouTube, and not everybody who watches my YouTube content is going to care at all about, you know, me doing covers on this channel. And eventually I'm going to mix in some of my own stuff and all that. But there's still people that are going to cross over and be interested.
Absolutely.
And I just, one thing that I'm focusing on is trying to do these songs and think about them differently.
Mm-hmm.
try and create something that the song is still familiar, but it's got my own spin on it. Because I mean, I've got the studio experience. I've been an engineer, both paid and unpaid, for ever since stuff was cheap enough to buy and put in your bedroom. And so I just want to kind of stretch my legs that way. And I still play gigs. In fact, I got a gig on the 2nd of February, and I want to be able to kind of broadcast those things and do live streams where I'm just doing some tunes and hanging out with people, and just bringing music back into what I do in a way that's not as intense as it was when I just was balls to the wall trying to make my way and end up making my living at it.
Well, and even that to me is, tell me if you agree, but it's almost funny how things can come full circle. And it's like, now that it's not ride or die and you're allowed to embellish it as a passion, that you've now got this audience that you can introduce that to, and you can do it again because of, just like you're doing the YouTube channel, but more than anything, just because you want to, and just because you're passionate about it. And any project, anything that you want to do always comes off better when it's done for that kind of reason, and you're doing it for the creation. Like you said earlier about Sarah Dietschy, doing it for her. And if you're doing it for you, then, you're going to find an audience for it.
Right. And that was the thing. I mean, I struggled with that a lot when I was younger in New York, surrounded by record labels, every gig. We played a gig where we opened for a band called the Old 97s, and like freaking Clive Davis was there. And I was just kind of like, that's Clive Davis. He drove up in a white limo, It's like, and it was at a club that held like 200 people, maybe. I would vacillate back and forth between, creating music and really loving that, making records and doing the recording and playing the shows, and then also get too caught up in, is this person from X label going to show up, or are we going to get, enough people to look respectable at this gig, or whatever. And I just, it was so easy to lose track of the art in all that business stuff.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, totally. I'll never forget it. It was 6 years ago. I got called into my publisher's office, and literally they set me down, and this was verbatim what they told me. Steve, we need you to stop writing great songs, and we need you to start writing songs we can get cut. That is verbatim. And I said, I cannot do that. I understand the importance from the economics of it for the music business and the major labels to take a 25-54 demographic and genre and turn that into a 10 to 22. I get it. That's where the money's at now. But I can't do that. I cannot go and sit in a room twice a day, 5 days a week, and write bubblegum stuff. I mean, I can. It just doesn't move me. It's not something that I want to do. And at the end of the day, I've got to be proud of it. I've got to listen back to it and go, you know what? Regardless of the fact if I wrote it or not, I like it. And if I don't do that, then that's kind of my barometer. I wrote probably 98% less in 2018 than I have ever written in the last 25 years. I bet I wrote 15 songs last year, and I wrote probably 250 the year before and every other year before that, because I don't like where it's at. I can't go in and sit down and write what the kids want, and
I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's funny, we were talking about Aerosmith before. I think that period where Aerosmith came back in the late 90s, mid 90s, and they were doing songs for 16-year-olds, but they themselves were in their 40s and almost 50s. And that to me again was just kind of one of those weird things where I'm like, I don't know. I mean, do they really like that song?
No,
that they're making $1 million with? I don't know. I've struggled with that too. Like I had opportunities to audition for Rent when it was pre-Broadway, when it was just starting out as a thing. I had an opportunity to audition for that. You know, I probably could have tried out the whatever the what is it, the guy with Simon Cowell.
American Idol, America's Got Talent.
Yeah. American Idol. I mean, that started up at the time that I was still really like pushing hard, and I probably could have gone and auditioned for that. But I was at a point where I was like, that's just not what I want to do. I don't want to sing somebody else's songs. I don't want to cater to an audience that I wouldn't like.
You know, and I will tell you, back in I would say probably the first like 6 or 7 years of American Idol, when they got done, because one of the major offices for 19 is here in Nashville, they would it's like they would leave, the show would end and then they would leave. They would bring them all here and we would all write with them for the next 2 or 3 weeks. And I cannot think of a single one, and I wrote with every single one of them. I can't think of a single one that, other than what was happening to them and their dreams were coming true, from a business standpoint, none of them were happy. And not only was it the music, but they were going to have to do many things that they wouldn't normally do, and things that they didn't like and they didn't agree with, that if you had that power yourself, you would not allow yourself to do. None of them.
Right.
And it's almost sad that that's where we've gotten to as society. I mean, that whole saying sellout, I mean, that's where it comes from, but it's just kind of sad to see that, you know, and it's getting worse and worse that way, because these kids today, I tell them all that, do you want to be successful or do you want to be famous? Because I'm not interested in helping anybody become famous, but successful, that's a different story. But these kids today, and whether it's social media, YouTube, music, or anything else, I'm convinced that they would rather have the perception of fame than the reality of success.
Yeah, and I think for young people, I know this was the case for me back when I was in my teens or whatever. If you're 17, 18 years old and you've got a talent that puts you in front of somebody who can make a difference to change your life in a certain way, you haven't developed all of your skills for, like, well, what does that look like for me? Is that what's that going to look like 5 years down the road or 2 years down the road? You know, that's the gold ring is right there. And you're like, okay, you know, give it to me. And then a couple of years later, you're like, you're really not digging your life. But if you want to be successful, then sometimes you, like, for me, it was, I'm not going to do something that I don't want to do. And a lot of times that meant not exploring opportunities that might have taken me someplace that would have given me more of the fame-like stuff, but wouldn't have sustained me or a career over the long term. So yeah, it's hard to know the difference when you're so young.
It is. And you know, I think a lot of that is we look at, I've got a 12-year-old daughter and a 15-year-old daughter. And there's no way in the world we were as mature at 12. And that expectation of us was not there when we were 12 and 15, the way that it is today. But I also think as for mature as they may be, because of the world that we live in and the access to information and the internet, kids have to grow up faster and absorb that information, but still put in situations like that, they may be mentally have that information available to them, but they're not emotionally ready to take that kind of weight on.
Right. Yeah. So my daughter's 15, and she's much more sort of to herself and introverted than I was when I was her age. Like I knew I could sing, and I knew I could, you know, I was just starting to write songs and I wanted everybody to know it. And my daughter kind of doesn't put herself out in that way, but she's got her own little YouTube channel. And she sits there and she'll sometimes put up like 3 or 4 videos a night. Just
but she
like,
loves it.
And she's figured it out for herself.
That's exactly right. She loves it. She's doing it for the right reason.
Yeah. Yeah. And so at first when she was doing it, she's like, oh, you got to tell all your subscribers to come check me out. And I was like, look, if I do that, I mean, they're not really the target audience for you and what you're into. You just got to do your own thing and just keep doing it. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people lose track of on YouTube. Especially is it's easy to look at YouTube, and here I am, I'm sitting in a spare bedroom, got my studio set up, and it looks like I'm just doing it as easy as pie. And you look at people like PewDiePie or anybody else, and they're just huge beyond conception. And so as a young kid, you see that, and you don't see a whole lot of difference between what you can do in your bedroom and what they're doing in there.
That is exactly right.
And so it's been interesting, like being a YouTuber, being around teens, and talking to my daughter and other teenage kids. Like, being a YouTuber is the new rock star.
Oh, absolutely.
Like where I wanted to be like the Beatles when I was 15 years old, 15-year-old kids now want to be on YouTube doing something that they're super into.
You're exact. And it's so weird. I was talking to my wife about that last night. Like even 3 years ago, 4 years ago, it was, Daddy, can you get me backstage passes to Taylor Swift or Demi Lovato? All that. Now it is, Dad, do you know anybody that knows James Charles? Dad, do you know anybody? and I was like that. I'm like, who? And she's like, sisters. And I'm like, I have no clue what you're talking about. What are you talking about? And then it goes on, and she's like, what about the Dobrik? And I'm like, I don't know who. And you're exactly right. And my question of it is, and I said, how did you hear about these people? And they cannot tell you, which to me is the weird. It's almost like it's just, and I'm sitting down there the other day. She's watching on the weekends. We now have to go to Taco Bell every Saturday because she wants to do the mukbang thing. And I'm like, what's a mukbang? She goes,
I don't even know.
People film themselves eating Taco Bell. I said, that's a thing? She goes, oh yeah, it's millions and millions. And she turned it on. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me.
Yeah. My daughter was, I learned like some of the, like I didn't know anything about popular YouTube. She was into Liza Koshy.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And we sit down when we have dinner, we'll sit down and we'll like, we'll have the computer there or something. We'll watch some YouTube videos. And she, for a solid year, was watching Liza Koshy videos over and over. And Niga Higa was another one. And just, over the years, she's like gotten into these things. Otherwise, I wouldn't know anything about popular YouTube. And the thing that is amazing to me is like the question that you had, how do you find out about this stuff? And it's that magical algorithm sauce.
It must be.
There's something about,
I mean, nobody ever went and sat down one time and put mukbang into a search engine ever.
No.
So
but at some point, YouTube has been able to triangulate what you're watching.
Yes.
And then put it into the different tiers that have different algorithmic values as to whether or not you'll watch it.
Right.
And it makes rock and roll of the 50s, 60s, and 70s look like the Stone Age.
Oh, absolutely, it does. And the thing of it is that I thought at one time and this was years ago, but I thought one of the cool things about YouTube, I think, will be that it's going to create a historical record, a video historical record.
Right.
But I was wrong. Well, it is, but that historical record's going to start in 2013, or 2005. Right. It's not going to, have this back catalog because of all this new pop culture things that we're creating, and that seems to be on a daily or weekly basis, that it's very what's next mentality. It's okay, we've done that, now what's next? And it is amazing to watch because I think it's having a bigger influence than radio or television itself, cable, satellite, ever had on us. It is literally anything on demand at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, that's what's been. I made a video last week talking about how much I want Apple to make the iPod classic again, because you had to make a decision and to sit down and put the iPod on, you know, put the headphones on, find a record, listen to it, or just put it on shuffle or whatever. But when you were doing that, you were making a decision about your time and how you were going to spend it. And nowadays, everything can just come in one big wave. You can be listening to music while you're watching a YouTube video, while you're you know, searching something on Google, all over the place, you know, social media, this, that, and the other thing on three different platforms. And yeah, everything used to be by appointment. Like I remember when Michael Jackson's Thriller video came out. I was so obsessed with Michael Jackson at that time. And that video was just incredible compared to anything that I'd ever seen before. And MTV used to advertise the times that they would play the full video.
Yeah.
And we didn't have cable. Well, we had cable, but we didn't pay for MTV. So the neighbors across the street had it. And I would go across the street and spend a half an hour watching a Thriller video with the neighbors. You know, but I had to make that appointment.
That's right.
There wasn't anything else that I was going to do in that time. You know, the Thriller video was going to have my full attention. And whether or not it's a good or bad thing, I don't think anything gets our full attention anymore.
No. It's coming from all angles at all time. I don't think though if there's ever. I mean, even when you think about YouTube, when you've got it pulled up, unless you've got it blown up into full screen mode or whatever, theater mode, whatever they call it, there are recommending this. Well, if you like this, check this out. Same thing with Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, everywhere else. It's almost like they're forcing us to be an ADD society where it's like we cannot look at this one thing because what if and that's, you talk about retention on YouTube, and it's like it's impossible to have retention when you're suggesting 3,700 videos below the one I'm watching.
And that's the thing that's interesting about YouTube is, like, from a content creator standpoint, what you want to be able to do is start sessions. So if somebody gets a notification that your video came out, and then they come and they watch your video, but then they see like another video and another video and another video, and they watch 10 videos, you as a content creator get credit for all of that watch time.
Right.
Because you started the session. And you're right that it's kind of encouraging us to be an ADD kind of society, but it's kind of a chicken or the egg question, isn't it?
Totally is. Totally.
You know, was our attention being divided already by television and everything else to a certain point where once the kids who grew up in that generation started to make their own thing, it just built upon what they had experienced and learned. And now here we are with, like, you know, everybody's active on 3 or 4 social media outlets for, I guess, supposedly different things.
Yeah. I tried to get somebody to explain to me the difference between Instagram and Snapchat the other day, and I didn't get what I would consider to be yet a satisfactory answer.
Yeah, I never understood what Snapchat was really. It was the first time that it was clear to me that it was meant for people much younger than I am.
Absolutely.
First time I had that experience.
Absolutely.
Of like, okay, like I'm of an age where I really can't understand what they're doing.
No, and you know, Jason, we're not that old. I mean, there are people out there older than us, and it's like I'm with you. I told my daughter the other day, I said, there has never been a time when I have been made to feel older than just spending 5 minutes with the two of you girls. because I don't
Yeah.
I don't feel on the inside as old as I feel on the outside when I look at y'all and I see what you're doing and you're talking about this, that, and I'm like, I know I don't live in a bubble. You know, if we do live in a bubble, you live in my bubble. So how do you know all this? You know, somebody in chat was saying they go to school, and that is true. I mean, they go to school and they then get involved in everybody else's bubbles. So everybody spills little bits of their bubbles,
right.
and you know. And then what I don't get, and what I have a hard time with, is it seems to be 6 weeks behind. They don't learn something and then come home and share it. You have to lose that 6 to 8
right.
weeks and go, and then they look at you like you're a moron because you have no clue what they're talking about. And I'm like, I told them that I said, I give up. I absolutely give up. I can't do it. It took me having Snapchat 2 weeks to understand and realize why I didn't get it in the first place.
Yeah, the only saving grace for me now is that I know that Instagram matters more than Snapchat now.
Yes.
So but I still, like, my Instagram presence is like, I might put a picture up there once or twice a week, if not. I have not cultivated my Instagram anything at this point.
I went all into Instagram several years ago, and I couldn't do Twitter because I'm trying to do better about Twitter, but I hate Facebook and I hate Twitter because I don't care what somebody's political beliefs are. I really don't care. I did a video and talked about this it's been several months ago. I agree 100% with Bill Maher. And that is that this is the shit that used to be, we didn't talk politics, we didn't talk religion, we didn't talk all of that. And that was more of a personal thing. It was always, I remember my grandfather, my father, always, number one, you don't ever talk politics, you don't ever talk religion, and you don't ever talk money. You don't ever ask somebody how much money they make. You don't ever do. And it's like, I can't get on Facebook or Twitter long enough. And I don't care if you like Trump, hate Trump, like Pelosi, hate Pelosi. I cannot stand for it to be the first 19 things on my Twitter feed or my Facebook feed, no matter who it is that I'm following. And I just, and you don't get that. I mean, I don't anyway. I don't see that on Instagram. I don't see all the political, you know. And that's why somebody was trying to communicate with me via Twitter the other day, and I'm like, I don't Twitter. I have it, but I don't Twitter. And it's because I just can't stand it. It gets me in such a bad mood. It just angers me.
Yeah. Yeah, I had that experience with Facebook. I ran for local office here 3 times and lost every time. But I like to think that I won in my own special way.
You won the hearts, you just didn't win the minds.
Yeah. So it was, I couldn't get the votes, but I got the message out there. But it was really like Facebook, especially with the people who were involved in the local politics around this area, it was just a super pressure cooker. And it got way, way, way too overblown and important. And I just basically in 2016, I said, I'm not going to be here anymore. And I go back and I might post a picture for family and friends or whatever, or like something that somebody's got that I might happen to come across, but I don't even look at Facebook anymore. And Instagram is something that, like I said, I got the account, I put some stuff up, but I haven't really built anything out of it yet. Twitter, the thing that's interesting to me that I kind of noticed before my YouTube channel started to grow was that, at least in the tech YouTuber space, Twitter was kind of like the green room.
Right.
and you could encounter the folks who were making the videos that you were watching on Twitter. And it's kind of been that for me. So I'm more active on Twitter now than I ever was before. I don't do Facebook really at all. And the thing that I like about Twitter is that I don't I think I've pushed their algorithm to the point where I still get the political stuff, but it's not like a bunch of people talking
Right.
about it. It's like the thing over at the side where it gives you the hashtag to go
Well,
look at.
teach me, old wise one, because I'm trying to get into using it, and it's like I'm trying to do a little bit better. I will tell you this, and this blew me away. I'm working on a deal right now with a very, 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 very large company in the United States, and we had sent 2 emails back and forth, and we had a meeting, and then it was like they wanted to communicate via Twitter because I had said something on Twitter. They responded. So then I guess they thought the vernacular now is we're going to communicate via Twitter. And I'm like, no. Let's back up. Can we get on a phone call? Can we shoot email? Whatever. And their preferred way of communication is Twitter. And that just blows my mind. I do not understand. And I don't think I ever will.
Yeah, I do get frustrated with Twitter from time to time because it is nice that you only have so many characters with which to speak. So you can't really, it's difficult to dig the hole for yourself.
Right.
But it's I interact with some people only through Twitter. I interact with some people, through Facebook Messenger, or whatever. But I tend to, well, I've not been very good at it, but I've tried not to sort of air my business on Twitter.
Right. Right.
And, just my personal stuff. So I've gotten into a couple of heated things here and there, which is mostly my fault because I tend to fall into those things. And so I'm doing everything that I can to not involve myself in drama, intended or otherwise, on Twitter, and just kind of be there. But yeah, it is weird when people want to interact with you on some platform that you've just never. It's almost like a generational thing.
It really
is.
Like, it's just strange. Yeah. It's absolutely strange. Well, man, I don't want to keep you too long. You've already been here an hour, and I know you've got videos to create, man. You've got subscribers to gain and views to cash in on.
Yeah, I was able to get a lot of work done today. It's snowing here in Iowa, and I think we're getting more snow. So,
well, I can say I've been to Iowa once. I went on a radio tour with an artist about 10 years ago, and I just felt like it was the same 3 miles over and over and over and over again. But it was beautiful. Yeah. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. I never anticipated. I think at this point I've lived here longer than I lived in New York City. And I lived my first 19, 20 years in West Virginia. So I'm getting up to the point where it's, I think 14 or 15 years. Never thought I'd be here for that long. There is a weird cultural stuff between Midwesterners and folks from the East. And having both lived in West Virginia, which is one thing, and then living in New York City, which is another thing, there's often times where I'm like, I don't know these people.
Right.
But at the same time, Iowa City is an interesting town because it has the highest number of postgraduate degrees per capita in the entire nation.
Wow.
and because of the Writers' Workshop and other stuff at the university, it's like a mini New York if you want to go out and see a reading or something like that. There's lots of stuff going on, and it doesn't feel like a small town. Having grown up in a college town, it feels okay. Right. But man, if you drive 30 minutes out of Iowa City, you're in the middle of a
for miles.
Yeah. And that's why Iowa's really, they call the county that I live in the People's Republic of Johnson County. because we're one of the only super liberal pockets in Iowa.
I got you. Okay.
And so we have made the main university and all that kind of stuff. So Iowa City gets a lot of eyes on it. And yeah, you go out into other areas, and it's a whole different place.
I will say this though, I remember specifically calling my wife when we were out on the road, and I think we were in Des Moines. I think it was Des Moines. I swear to God, that is the cleanest downtown I have ever been in my entire. I mean, you could have dropped food beyond the 10-second rule, and I would have picked it up and eaten it. I never saw a piece of trash anywhere. No oil stains. I mean, it was just pristine. It was beautiful.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I noticed when I moved out here was all the roads and sidewalks were wider.
Yeah,
like by a lot compared to like New York or any other place on the East Coast. It's like land was at a premium when they built those towns and cities on the eastern side of the United States. Out here, they could just spread out.
Well,
every house has got its air conditioning.
That's what we're going through. We're going through such an expansion here right now that, I mean, when we moved here 15 years ago, Nashville was a different place. And there's some pictures online that just blew me away of Nashville in 2002 and Nashville in 2018. And they overlap them, and it's like, oh my, it's a different place. And it feels different because I'm in LA so much. I spend a ton of time in LA, and I'm back and forth. And it doesn't bother me when I'm there, the enormity of it and the I almost love it. But here it just really annoys me and bugs me that it's almost like we're getting just overrun, I mean.
Yeah, I think the last time I was in Nashville was probably 2000.
You wouldn't even
maybe 2001. And because we were doing the music thing and it was kind of alternative country, so we knew a lot of folks down that way. And one thing that I really loved about Nashville was all the little like bungalow houses that people were living in.
Right.
Those were really cool.
Yeah, those are gone
and
now.
That's
they're tearing. They are literally tearing. It's like the old. They are literally tearing the buildings down to put up a parking lot. It's almost like that song was prophetic in some way, because all the old studios have been torn down. I mean, we've managed to save RCA for now,
right?
But they're trying to tear it down to build condominiums, and it's. I mean, Music Row is just not even what Music Row used to be. I bet I go downtown once every 2 or 3 months. I mean, I have my own studio here. I don't have to go down to record or anything. So it's just, if you haven't been here since 2000, 2001, this would look like something out of Ready Player One to you, because it's just, it's nuts.
That's crazy. That's crazy. I mean,
I think they're going to put cranes on the license plates next year, because that's all you see is cranes.
Yeah, Nashville was one of the places that I was thinking about ending up after we were going to leave New York. And at the time, it was you could get down there and you could live for relatively cheap, and the music scene was there and everything, and it was attractive to me just because like those little quirky houses and just the community that was going on, and it felt like. I remember playing a show and then going somewhere else afterwards, and like Steve Earle's bass player was hanging out, and like there was just this intermingling of people, and you could, at least to a certain extent, sort of live amongst the folks who were making the music as well. And maybe that's not the case anymore.
It's sad. It's not. It's really sad. It's. The business took over, and it's just the pots became smaller, and the wallets became smaller, and the budgets became smaller, and everybody formed their own little circle. And if you're not in it, well, so be it. It's kind of sad, because I'm with you. That was always the allure for me, was wanting to be in that community. And I mean, I made it inside that community long enough to realize that I didn't want to be in that community, or I wasn't willing to do what it took to stay in that community. And now it's just non-existent.
Yeah, I know, and I kind of got that sense from afar because we were working with a publicist who had worked with Steve Earle when we did our second record, and now she manages Jason
Oh yeah,
Isbell,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and and I she was always like there was always a really loose kind of like
Right,
camaraderie in our interactions, and I could tell that like well I mean Jason Isbell is like risen to a certain height himself, and there was just like you could tell it was more
right.
businessy than it felt like when I first was in
Yeah.
working with her. So it just really interesting. Yeah, there's always for me it's always kind of like, well, what if I had made that decision? What if I decided that I was going to go down to Nashville and I was just going to write songs 5 days a week and see what happens. And but at the same time, like that was the thing that was I didn't want to get into a situation where maybe I would end up doing something that wasn't what I wanted to do.
Right, right.
And and YouTube is the thing that ultimately ended up being what I became successful at on my own terms,
Which is everything.
which was yeah, which was
But we don't know. We
you
didn't
know
know that 20 years ago.
no, no, I mean right now I recognize the value of being able to sort of control your own, drive the
Right,
bus
right.
yourself and know that you took like the road that you took on that bus is one that you made all the
No,
choices
that
for.
you know what?
Uh,
It's funny that you say that. I was doing an interview the other day and somebody said what was like the last question they said was what's been the most valuable thing in all of the success that you've had? What's the most valuable thing? And honest to God, my answer to that question is because now I can do whatever I want to do and I don't need anybody. I don't have to
Right.
do what I don't want to do. I can produce the projects I want to produce. I can write the songs I want to produce, and I can write the songs that I want to write. And I don't have to care anymore if anybody likes them or what my
Right.
publisher's going to think about it or what Keith Urban thinks about it. It doesn't matter. And that to me
Right.
has got me probably so much happier than any of the physical or financial things that having that amount of success can bring is I could do away with all that and just be where I am now, and that is being able to do what I want when I want with whom I want, and that there's so much
Yeah.
value in that.
Yeah, and like I was talking about before, it feels to me like that I'm kind of on the just about to turn over onto the downward slope of getting to that place. Because the YouTube thing has taken me to a certain place where I can see the financial things are gonna come, and that's gonna give me the freedom to be able to continue to work on my novel,
Well,
my other book, continue to make music, et cetera,
absolutely.
et
I
cetera.
mean, you've got once you have
And
that platform to stand on, that allows you
right,
all the creative freedom in the world to express it however you feel like you need to or want to.
yeah, and that's what I'm excited about is the fact that I'll be able to do what I want to do without having to worry about what anybody else wants me to
Well,
do.
I see you and I working on a record together in the future. I think it'd be a lot of fun. I'd love to have you down to Nashville and
Oh, that'd be awesome.
stick
Man.
our
That'd
heads
be
in the
awesome.
studio for about a week or two and come out with a masterpiece.
That would be a lot of fun. That would be a lot of fun because I've always I've always kind of worked songwriting wise. I would like write the song and bring it to the band and we would sort of flesh out the arrangement. But I've always wanted to do that thing where you just get into a studio with somebody else and sort of lose all track
Right.
of time and come out the other end with something. I made a record with this guy Jay Bennett who used to be in
Yeah.
Wilco, and he was a crazy person, and in some of the best ways, but also in some really self-destructive ways. But that's the way he worked. Like after my band went on hiatus, I did spend 9 months writing songs all by myself, like 5 days a week. And I put together some demos and went out to Chicago to make a record with him. And it was literally like the two of us playing everything. We brought in a drummer to do the drum tracks, and then for the rest of the week it was the two of us.
Right.
And he was one of those mad scientist kind of guys who would just like, he would, you know, string an amp up in the fire stairs
right.
to get that reverb, you know, or whatever. And I loved working that way, so I'd love to come down, man. That'd be awesome.
We will at some point we will get that on the books and we'll do that, because I think it'd be a blast. Somebody in the chat was like, and you could YouTube the whole thing. It's like, I mean, you know, that is the world we live in now, is we do have to think of things through that content, you know, lens, and it's, you know.
Yep.
But yeah, it's and I'm just starting out on this whole YouTube journey, and I'm finally getting my sea legs underneath me, and it's just been inspirational to watch you grow, and do what it is, like I said earlier, that you can tell very upfront that you're passionate about it, that you're enjoying it, and there is nothing I love to see more than people be successful at what they're passionate about.
Oh, thank you, man. Yeah, it's been a ride so far.
Awesome.
So
well, keep it up. Keep making those
rolling.
videos, and we'll check back in with you, and we'll work on something. We'll get it to where we can get back in, get you down here to Nashville or something.
That sounds awesome,
man. Thank you, Jason, for being with us. Everybody, check out, if you haven't already, Painfully Honest Tech. You can find it on YouTube. There's also a link to it in the description down below. And Jason, tell us about, where can they find you on Twitch? What is it on Twitch?
The Twitch channel hasn't really gotten up and running that much yet, but it's called Sad Iron Music, SADIRON Music, which is sort of the name that I've used for, you know, the band that I work with, or whatever music project I'm doing at a particular time since I moved out here. So Sad Iron Music is the Twitch channel, and Jason T. Lewis is the
other YouTube channel where you're doing the covers and music stuff. Awesome.
Yeah. And I'm on Twitter at Jason T. Lewis PHT, and Instagram. It's got all kinds of hyphens.
Jason is Jason_T_Lewis_PHT on Instagram. Yeah. You know, sometimes you don't think you're making it too complicated until you realize it is. Well, it looks simple. Just try to say it 10 times real fast. Awesome, brother. Thank you so much for coming on tonight, doing the show. And like I said, we'll catch up with you soon. Thanks, man. Have a great rest of your night.
You too.
All right, guys, there he is, Jason T. Lewis from Painfully Honest Tech. Guys, check out his YouTube channel. I can't imagine anybody watching this right now is not at least familiar or hasn't seen at least one of the videos or something, but it's there for you to go check out, and I hope that you do. What an awesome show. I've been wanting to have Jason on for a while. I love watching his content, love watching the videos, and I hope you'll check them out as well. We will be back next Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central, for the Steve Freeman podcast. If you want to go back and watch this again, it will be available later tonight on YouTube on demand. And then it will be available tomorrow at noon on iTunes and Spotify. Guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I want to thank Jason again for being a trooper, coming on, talking YouTube, talking music, and just talking about life. That's kind of what we do here on the Steve Freeman podcast. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, keep pushing the boundaries. Keep being creative. And there's nothing wrong with being independent. See you guys next time.
Here we are again. Don't give me your